It's been so funny with like, you know, a year and a half of Zoom meetings. I feel like I always, you're gonna, it's 4:59 right now. And in like 2 minutes, we're gonna have a full house, but it always is like, I wonder where everyone is. And then everyone like logs on right then.
Totally
You're
true.
so right, Jessica. I'm looking at the participant list. Like, we have like 3 CSC members. Where is everyone? It's like 1 more minute to go. They will be right.
But I'm totally guilty of it at work too, where I'm like, oh, I have a second. I mean, you ask Heather, you ask the whole team. I have a second. And then it's like, 4:01. I'm like, dang it, log on. I'm 1 minute late.
Yeah.
I do that too.
When we were in person, I would, take my 5 minutes to make sure I had all my stuff and go to my meeting and,
Well, the other issue is if you are trying to dial in, I have misdialed the meeting number 3 times, just one little number, and I just have to start again and again. So it's definitely, the login part can take a little bit of time too.
Totally.
Even though our Zoom platform is set up in a way where you can have Zoom calling you, so you don't have to plug in all those numbers.
Yeah, I never do that. I know you can, but I don't, for some reason, I just never have it call me. It never works quite right when I do it, but it is a great option. Hello, Albert. Good to see you.
Hello there. Good to be with you all.
Howdy. We are seeing people gradually join on, and for those of you that have just joined us, welcome. We're going to get started in just a few moments. As you may have seen on your screens, we are recording this meeting and we are also streaming live on YouTube. So we are going to get started in just a few moments, but we want to give everyone a second to join, to get comfortable for our meeting of the Community Steering Committee for the Stockton AB617 community. Happy Wednesday. Happy September, believe it or not. Can't believe it. Absolutely jaw-dropping that it's already September.
Erica, hold on a second. I think we are missing some of our CSC members because they might be on the wrong link. So hold on a second.
Oh, okay, sounds good. And then let me know too as well, Zong, when we have Mark on the line, who I'm not sure is here yet.
Yeah, I'm checking with him. It looks like there are some CSC members in a different link, but I'm not sure where they're at. So hold on.
Makes sense. While you are waiting, like the rest of us, if you've just joined us, please do go ahead and make sure that your screen name reflects your actual name. I've been on a couple of Zooms recently with people who have kids who have been utilizing their parents' computers for school, and they've changed their screen names. And so you might want to double check and make sure you are who you say you are. And please do go ahead and drop in your affiliation and your first name and your last name so that we can make sure we know if you're a CSC member, a resident, a member of the public, or a member of another organization. We do appreciate that, and it is absolutely critical for people that are in our stipend program. We like to keep track of everyone when they log in and how long they've been on the Zoom line as well. So we do appreciate you making that adjustment. And if you have any questions about that or need any assistance with that, just let us know, and we are happy to make that adjustment on our end if you're not able to do it yourself. Thank you for that note, Gloria. Some people were confused about the Zoom link. So there might be some conflicting Zoom links out there. So we're going to give our fellow CSC members a couple of moments to join in this link. For those of you that have found us, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Mark is here, Erica.
This is the sign language interpreter. Can we make sure that Doug can see me? I believe you're on mute, Doug, if you're trying to speak.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to ping you, but won't let me. Oh, okay. Let me try to ping now.
I'll spotlight him for you.
Okay.
And then you should be able to pin him.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
No problem. Hi, Nate. Good evening, and thank you for that note. We will try and get going as soon as possible. I do understand that there are a few CSC members that were on the wrong Zoom, so we're giving them a second to just get on the line, and we're going to start in just a few seconds.
Erica, this is Ed Ward.
Hi, Ed.
We're going to miss you.
Hello. How are you? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your hard work and management of the process.
We appreciate you, Ed. Thank you so much. It's been our privilege. And yes, we're going to talk a little bit about that, I think, when we get started.
Great.
I know that we have a community co-host, and he was going to step away for a second. Jonathan said, be right back, and I'm not sure if he is back yet, but that would be one of the things we want to do. But I think we have enough people on to at least begin some of the formalities of housekeeping so that we can stay on track and on time and make sure that Nate doesn't miss too much of our meeting. So I think we've got Jess, and by the time I finish with all the introductory things, I'm sure we'll have Jonathan back. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I can just start by thanking you all for joining us on this, well, for me, beautiful Wednesday. I know it's a bit of a challenging time in a lot of parts of California with so many fires burning. So we just send our hearts and thoughts out to anyone that's affected by those. But we're glad that you're able to join us today. And certainly the work that you're doing on air quality is just so important in the context of so much challenge that we've been seeing lately. So if you haven't met me before, virtually, my name is Erica Manuel. I'm the CEO of a nonprofit organization called ILG, and I'm happy to lead the facilitation team for this AB617 community with my team members, Hannah and Julia. They are on the line, and they are maybe waving if you can see them. Otherwise, they'll be available to help you out with any problems you might have throughout this meeting, along with your Air District friends and team members as well. We are always working to have an inclusive process, and so what we will do throughout this meeting is triple check and make sure that our colleagues in the ASL interpretation line are able to effectively communicate with some of our CSC members. And if you do have any additional interpretation or other needs, please do reach out to the Air District to make sure that they know that if you have either language or interpretation needs, that they can plan for that in future meetings. We know that Douglas and Mark are all set up, so we're going to move on to the next part of our Zoom logistics. And this is just a couple reminders for those of you that might be new to this meeting or have maybe forgotten. Maybe some of you haven't been on Zoom all day, every day. Couple things to remember for this meeting, just to make sure that your screen name is accurate. Remember that ILG is happy to rename you manually if you're not able to do that. And we'll check with everybody before we get started to make sure that everyone that needs to be renamed is able to. We do ask that you raise your Zoom hand during our conversations if you want to make a comment or to ask a question, and we will gladly call on you as soon as we can in the order that we see those hands. And then please stay on mute, because there's a lot of us usually on the line, and anytime you're not speaking, it's helpful to keep that background noise to a minimum if you keep yourself on mute. And we'll remind you if you start talking and we can't hear you, we'll definitely say, please unmute yourself, just to give you that reminder. If you are in the stipend program, you will need to stay in the meeting for 75% of the meeting time to get credit for that meeting, so please remember that. And then you should have gotten a notice that says that the meeting is being recorded. It's being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, and those notifications should have gone to you when you joined the meeting or as soon as we push that record button. Next slide, please. These CSC meetings, they're always open to the public. We are grateful to members of the public that join via Facebook or YouTube throughout the evening, but we do ask that members of the public please weigh in during the public comment portion of the meeting at the very end. And those questions and comments can be posted on those social media handles or submitted via email. And you can see that on the screen, ab617@valleyair.org. And we will make sure to make a record of those comments and include those in the meeting notes. So before we move on to the other portion of the agenda, I want to ask if there are any participants logging in by phone that need to be checked or renamed for attendance purposes. Let's just do a really quick check to make sure we have everybody squared away.
Erica, I think we do have everyone identified, and thank you to those renaming themselves.
Excellent. Well, we are happy to stop at any time. You can also send us a message in the chat if you need additional assistance throughout the meeting. So ILG is a neutral facilitator in this meeting, and our role is to really work with you and your community co-hosts to make sure that your conversation is informative, that it's productive, that it's really in line with what the goals are that you have as CSC members for this process. We love making sure that community voices are heard, that they're incorporated into the record, and we try to make sure that the meeting agenda is covered fully so that we start on time and end on time. We know there's some wiggle room here and there because of things like the wrong Zoom line, but we do try and leave enough time for public comment at the end, just to make sure that we have that honored space for the general public. That being said, this is your meeting. It always has been, and we do honor and value that meaningful discussion. So what we're going to do is work together with all of you today to make sure, and the co-hosts, of course, to make sure that we work through this agenda tonight at the right speed. We do know, and we have seen in the chat already, some of you might have to pop off a little early. We're going to try really hard to get through as much of our agenda as we can so you don't miss too much. And then last, of course, we want to make sure that we keep our conversation and the tone of our comments respectful to your fellow meeting attendees. All right, so on the slide right now on the screen are just some tips for sharing this virtual space. Again, if you're new to us, this is just a list of considerations and reminders about how to make sure that everyone in this virtual meeting has the best experience possible and that we accomplish the goals of our meetings and the overall process itself. So as your facilitator, I certainly honor your lived experiences. I want to acknowledge your perspectives and even allow you the space, if possible, to disarm, to discuss whatever, harm or trauma or whatever it is you've experienced because of some of the issues related to air quality and some that you might be experiencing certainly in the very recent past. But that said, we do want to make sure that we center on shared values, and that's what this helps us do. But again, step up, step back, give your fellow CSC members a chance to do that as well. And then we've also got an icebreaker this evening that's going to help you all kind of continue to get to know one another, even in this virtual environment. And we do want you to feel comfortable speaking up, sharing your insights. And it's especially important at this stage in your CSC kind of journey. You're doing SERP implementation. You've got to really talk about the ins and outs of how you're going to implement the plan that you put together. So your committee members really will want to hear, and hopefully you'll want to share your insights. And we do appreciate all of you in advance just for honoring that. The next slide is some additional tips and reminders. You do not need to have us read those. You've seen them before. But we do want to make sure that we're going to honor these through the meeting, just to make sure that everyone feels like we've had a meaningful discussion and that we're having respectful dialogue and that we're really keeping our eye on the prize of making sure that this SERP that you've developed really gets implemented in the way that you want it to for the community. All right, so let's move on to our agenda for tonight. The next slide shows kind of what we have planned for today. We've got some flexibility with the time frames, but we're going to end no later than 7 o'clock tonight. And then after we have our welcome from our host and our co-host, we'll have a short icebreaker with some CSC members just to try and replicate the kind of networking that you might have experienced if we were in person for this meeting. A lot of other CSCs had the opportunity to meet for a few months before we were sheltered in place, and this CSC really didn't. So we definitely want to build that in. And then we're also going to move into the SERP incentive measures and really talking about how those measures are going to be implemented. And then after that, you're going to see a new SERP tracking table, which is going to give you more of a regular snapshot of your progress with the SERP implementation as you begin doing this really, really important work. And then we're going to discuss some standing updates before we wrap up. All right, so we'll take this slide down, and then to set the tone for today's meeting and really share additional notes with you, we're going to turn it over to Jess from the Air District, and then Jonathan, I think he's back. He's your community co-host for tonight. Have them say a few words about this meeting before we dive into the agenda.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Erica. Definitely, I appreciate all of the run through that you did, and I apologize for somehow that there was another Zoom link out there, but it seems like we still got ourselves back on track and we're still on time on the agenda. So I just appreciate all of you. It seems like we're a pretty well-oiled machine, and we're moving on forward either way. I'm Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the district. I know obviously a lot of you, but I do see a few new faces or folks that maybe haven't been on in a bit. So welcome back. Today's meeting, as Erica mentioned, so I won't go into it too much, is really about those CERT measures, really how we're going to move forward, how all of the subcommittees that you have all recommended, how we'll proceed forward with those, and sort of what buckets some of these CERP incentives measures live in. And we'll definitely explain that through a presentation here in a moment. One of the big things I definitely wanted to let you know, if you haven't checked your email already, or you weren't a part of our process the past couple of weeks, is a lot of you know we went through a recent sort of recruitment or process rather to hire a new facilitation team. Not that we don't believe that, and we all agree, and I know Ed shared similar sentiments to what I share, that ILG has done a great job, but we did go out for a proposal to request anyone who was willing and able to take on facilitation of the Stockton, but all of the other CSC meetings throughout the Valley. We had a couple of people who applied that were qualified go through an interview process. You all submitted questions. Several of you were there during the webinar, and we also posted the webinar for folks to take a look at afterwards, provide their feedback in a survey. And I think we even called several of you and folks kind of up and down the Valley to make sure we really made this a community-led, community input process. So with that, we are very happy, and you should have seen the email, but if you didn't, to announce that Harder & Company, which was one of the folks that you met the other night if you were on our webinar, was selected by you all to be the next facilitator for the Stockton community. And so we've actually invited Daniela Flores and Jessica Silva. They can wave right now. They're two facilitators at Harder & Company who are going to just kind of observe today. They're going to be, ILG has been so gracious and really willing to make sure this is a smooth transition and smooth process over the next month or so. And so they're going to watch our awesome ILG team in action, get to interact with all of you. And at our next agenda setting meeting, which is next Thursday, we'll bring this same team in and actually have them interact and have a lot more sort of a feedback mechanism where they talk with you all a little bit more. But we definitely don't want to go off too much on the agenda here, so you'll definitely see them in this meeting. Feel free to give a shout out, say hi, introduce yourself during the icebreaker, and we certainly look forward to working with them. And that said, we'll definitely during the wrap up as well, make sure we throughout the meeting and during the wrap up give a big kudos, big thank you, and big shout out to ILG for all the work that they've been doing for us the past couple of years. So thank you. With that, I will pass it to Jonathan to give a little more context for today's meeting.
Oh, wow. I thank guys, Jonathan Pruitt, Program Coordinator, Catholic Charities. I remember the first time we've had the very first meeting, if you remember, in March 2020. It's been so long. I definitely do miss that food. I know y'all do too. We've been doing so much things, and now we're really here to break apart and talking about, subcommittees. And also we'll be really discussing about, key updates that will deal with the air monitoring. But before we even get into that, I think we just need to get to know each other. I think that's the most important. I think that's something that a lot of us have probably missed. Just getting to the, go down deep down to earth to let people know, hey, behind the screen, we're still, we still live in this community. This is what we do, instead of the official, having to come in with some ideas with air monitoring, or it deals with air quality. I think the other thing that's important is just to get to know the person as a human. And so this is what we're doing. And so I'll turn it back to Jessica so we can get started with the breakout session.
And I'll take it back to Erica. Thanks.
No worries. Well, thank you both for that intro. And, I think Jonathan did a fantastic job of sort of setting up how we wanted to start today's meeting. And again, we do this occasionally. This isn't totally new. We've done it a few times with this committee. And again, the intention is really just to make sure that in addition to doing the work of the CERP, that you're also leveraging sort of the fact that these are people in your community that care about some of the same issues that you do, that have, obviously lives and real connections to the space that you're in. And maybe there are opportunities for you guys to work together even outside of AB617. There could be other things happening within your worlds and your spaces that could be linked and brought together. And so building those connections and building those relationships is really critical. And we're hopeful that we can do a little bit of that today with a little breakout. And it's just a fun question. It'll be a short one. But we are going to break you up into virtual breakout groups. And today's icebreaker questions are a really easy one. We're going to post something up on the screen so you can see it. As always, reintroduce yourself to the group. Just give a name, an organization, or kind of your interest and affiliation. And then the question we have for you today is really, what is something that your CSC colleagues may be surprised to know about you? So what's something that's kind of unique that you'd like to share about yourself? What's something that you think would be interesting for them to know? Just a little more personal information about you, because again, it's about building connections and relationships and getting to know something that you may not have known about someone. Really light-hearted kind of intro and icebreaker today, and then we're going to get into some real SERP implementation business. But we're going to start with just some relationship building and some networking. And so we have everybody queued up to go into breakout rooms. And I want to confirm this because I know that Zong and Heather are working behind the scenes on the breakout rooms. I believe that this is just the CSC that's going to be broken out into those breakout groups. But if you would like to be in one, I'm certain that they could drop you in one if you don't get assigned to one. But the way that this will work, and depending on the version of Zoom that you have, it's very likely that you will automatically be dropped into the breakout room that's been assigned to you. And you're going to have about 10 or 15 minutes to do this breakout. And if you do not get automatically assigned, what will likely come up is a pop-up window that says you've been assigned, please accept that assignment. Click on that accept button if it doesn't automatically move you. And then if you happen to not get any one of those and you're still in the main room, but you do want to get moved into a breakout, just unmute yourself, let us know, and we'll drop you in to an available room as soon as everyone gets kind of settled. So 3 different options for getting into that breakout room, and we'll have the screen dropped so we can see everyone, and we'll ask if there are any questions of the group before we get into our large breakout. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand virtually or in person. Seeing none, I will ask Zong and Heather if we're ready. I think Zong's nodding. Okay, so some of you should start to see and will be moved into breakout rooms very shortly. And those questions are, just introduce yourself and say what organization you're with or affiliation you have within the Stockton community. And then the next thing is, think of something unique or different, maybe a hobby, maybe an interesting background that you've got, or something that you really like to do, or places you like to go. We appreciate anything that's unique or interesting. And it looks like those rooms are in progress. We'll see you guys in just a few moments. We'll give you a notice when that breakout rooms are timed to close. Thank you, Zong. Looks like we put almost everybody in, huh?
And Zong, I dropped the questions in the chat box so you can broadcast those questions to participants.
Okay, will do.
Looks like you put, okay, so we don't have Cynthia.
It didn't copy well. Oh, not sure.
Thank you.
Oh, Cynthia, did you just pop in?
No, she's been here. I'm not sure though.
Oh, I am here. I got here a little late because SB Vilma is unable to attend today.
Okay, let me see if I can drop you into a room. Yeah.
It looks like we started at 5:20 on the dot, 5:21-ish, so we're right on schedule. And for those of you that are on YouTube watching us not really do anything, we will be back at about 5 I'd say 5:40 at the latest. 5:40, we'll resume in the main channel. Zong. So I know most people have about 5 people in their group or less, 4 to 5. So we might actually be close to done. Should we do a meeting? Can we do a broadcast message that says another 2 minutes?
Okay, we'll do.
Great.
And then we'll have a 2-minute countdown for the automatic, or 1 minute countdown for the automatic group closure.
So yeah, so make it so that it includes the countdown. I think there's only one group with like 5 people. Oh, there's a couple with 5. Thank you. Is your countdown set at 90 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, do you know?
Let me see. I sent the message, but I don't think I can, unless Hannah can help me. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
you just click on close the groups and your setups should be, yeah.
Oh,
That's-
because once I hit that, then it will start automatically doing this.
Yeah, I'll close
Yeah,
out.
yeah, so their countdown is gonna be 60. After 60 seconds, everyone will be brought back automatically.
So I was gonna wait another minute before I hit that.
Did you already push the close button? Great. What's our countdown?
They'll be back in 40 seconds.
Got it. Thank you. Welcome back. Hope you had enough time in those breakout groups, that you were able to have at least an entertaining and interesting conversation with your fellow CSC members and other stakeholders in this AB617 community. See everyone just getting settled. All right, I think we are all back. Well, like I said, welcome. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I hope you had a chance to learn something new or interesting or unique, or maybe all of those things from some of the people around the Zoom screen that you may not have met in person, or that you may not have known something particular about. So we hope that was a fun exercise. And we won't ask necessarily everyone to report out on that, but if there is anyone that wants to share their unique trait or their unique characteristic or something special about them, I will certainly allow someone to raise their hand and tell us if you want to give anybody a thought. And maybe I'll ask our community co-host to weigh in if he's available to say what he shared as his unique trait or interesting kind of tidbit factoid about him. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. No, I'm not.
Hi,
It's interesting. I think Kyle takes a cake on that. So Kyle, if you want to share and also share your screen, unless you don't have to, because it's technically live on YouTube. But I mean, you could share it out if you'd like, Kyle.
Calling me out. Yeah, here I could drop the link into the chat if everyone would would be so kind to indulge me talking about my wedding some more. I only need the barest of excuses to talk about it for hours and hours. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's a real wedding link. My goodness.
Yeah, so my wife and I got married back in 2016, and we're both really big Game of Thrones fans, and so we had a Game of Thrones themed wedding. And our photographer, I guess, had so much fun shooting our wedding that he submitted our stuff to this magazine, and they actually like posted stuff on it.
I'm dying.
That is so incredible. I love it. Okay, if you have a chance to click on this link, it's amazing. Your bride is gorgeous. Everything looks amazing. So thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, y'all.
And Kyle was able to get hooked up by UC Davis Theater Club.
Oh yeah, yeah. All the costumes for me and my groomsmen. It was the UC Davis Theater Department. They basically rent their costumes out as a costume shop, and so I talked to the theater director to rent some costumes, and she's like, "No, we'll just make new costumes." And I guess she turned it into like a class project for some of her students.
Wow.
So yeah, it was awesome. If you ever need costumes, check out the UC Davis Theater Department.
Absolutely incredible. The photos are beautiful. There's a video and photos. If you click on the link, it's absolutely epic. There's no other way to describe it. That's a really great, unique. I don't know. I would say that's definitely a factoid about you. And it's a little bit of a hobby too. If you're still huge Game of Thrones fans, I'm sure there's probably others on this Zoom screen today as well. I read the series before it was even on HBO, so I definitely appreciate all of that.
Awesome.
Jessica's going to make her husband remarry her in Game of Thrones style, so you have set the bar very high for anybody that wants to get their vows renewed or even get married for the first time. All right, well, thank you all for sharing. And again, please do take opportunities as you can to get to know your fellow CSC members, because it is great for just connecting around community issues that matter above and beyond AB617. There's certainly lots of linkages that can be made with our CARB friends, and then others across, like I said, all of the different stakeholders that are part of this incredible process. Okay, well, now we are jumping into the implementation of our incentive cert measures. And we want to talk a little bit about how we're going to implement these important measures. Now that you've developed them, that CARB's approved them, how do we do this, right? So I think that we've begun the process now, and today's a big part of it, of talking through what the actual implementation looks like. So I believe it's Brian that's going to talk us through some of this section. Are you on the line?
I am.
There you are. Hello.
I am here. Great to see everybody. Do I need to share my screen for the PowerPoint presentation, or was somebody going to pull that up?
I think you are sharing your screen. If you got it, if you want to send it to us, we could probably work magic behind the scenes, but.
Nope, I got it here. Just wanted to make sure that we were squared away, and super cool, yeah. Kyle. I'm glad your wedding turned out much better than others in the Game of Thrones universe. So my name's Brian Dodds, and I'm a program manager here in our Grants and Incentives Department. And going to talk today a little bit about the SERP strategies and how we implement them, and the framework that kind of CARB has provided for implementing kind of a lot of these unique measures that we have in the SERP.
Brian, we lost it. Now I'm seeing like
Okay, I apologize. I had moved it, and that creates issues. Thanks, Jess. Let me pull it back up. I needed to be able to see it. All right, we all squared away on that now?
Yes, we can see you again, yes.
Okay, perfect. So CARB has established guidelines for how any of the incentive funds can be utilized for 617. And there's a couple different mechanisms that exist. Kind of the first overall one is that anything within existing kind of programs, the Carl Moyer program, Prop 1B program that CARB has established are eligible. And then they've also carved out a few other categories that are eligible just sort of off the bat. You can fund them and move forward. And in addition to that, they have mechanisms for kind of projects that are outside that scope. So projects that might be developed for stationary sources or community identified projects that might be within the SERP. There's a process that we go through to get those approved by CARB, and then we can fund projects that fit into that category at the appropriate time. So that's kind of the framework of what we're going to talk about today, is kind of what are the ones that are sort of pre-existing and approved and we can move forward with, and what are the ones that we might need to submit a project plan to CARB for, or maybe we already have submitted a project plan for a different community, our Shafter or South Central Fresno community, and we can draw off of that for the Stockton community. So a couple of different buckets that we're going to try and put some of our SERP measures into. Overall, the guiding principles that CARB has for incentive measure utilization are to, reduce emissions in the community. And that's kind of a primary focus here, is we want to reduce criteria and greenhouse gas emissions that might be within the community. We want to focus funds on projects that reduce PM 2.5, but also community-specific toxic air contaminants and other criteria, air pollutants that might be impacting a community. We want these projects to have community support, which is why we had such an extensive process to go through to develop the community emission reduction program, and kind of factoring in the different viewpoints and suggestions that community members might have for what they want to see within their community. We want to consider special projects to protect sensitive receptors, and we want to look at cost effective.
I'm doing okay, but my Lord, what a...
Ned, you're not muted. There you go. Perfect. We want to look at cost effectiveness and relative exposure reduction in making our decisions. The community identified project requirements. So these are kind of some of the special projects that maybe we haven't done before that might be unique to your community. Those are measures that are selected by the community steering committee for inclusion in the SERP. And they're eligible for funding following the CARB project plan review and evaluation process. Part of that process is we want to quantify the emissions and exposure reduction benefits that might occur from that type of measure. And if they're not, directly quantifiable, there may be some qualitative benefits that are based on, impacts to the environment, local health concerns and impacts, and other socioeconomic factors. There might be a couple of those types of measures within the Stockton SERP, such as truck rerouting, that certainly have quantifiable benefits, but might not have direct emission reductions associated with a study like that.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
I know that there is a question from Margot, and I don't know if you want to take your questions at the end or if you want to take them all the way through.
It might be easier to wait till the end, if that's okay. And hopefully we can answer some of the questions along the way.
Thanks, Margot. We'll come back to you though, so definitely raise that hand again.
So the approval process for these incentive measures and what that kind of looks like, I touched on this a little bit, but we can fund certain measures that are already approved within CARB's community air protection guidelines, essentially right away. This would include things like school bus replacement programs, locomotive and switcher programs. The public school air filtration program is already an established sort of CAP incentive program. And basically the rest of the measures have to go through an approval process with CARB. And each CERP measure that we have must have its own specific project plan that's been developed and approved. And this goes kind of beyond the SERP. So we have the SERP that outlines all these measures, and then we develop specific project plans for each of those measures based on feedback that we get from the community, and we go through and address all the requirements that CARB has for approving those types of project plans. The picture is, and we have these posted on our website, but this is the lawn and garden project plan that we submitted for our South Central Fresno and Shafter communities, which has been approved by CARB. So the process for getting these approved is we have to draft and submit incentive project plan to CARB for every measure that is not currently in the CAP guidelines. And then we work collaboratively with CARB throughout the review process. Oftentimes they have questions that we need to address and provide additional information or feedback on, depending on the situation. CARB, will have comments which the district addresses in a second draft potentially of the project plan, and then submits that back to CARB. CARB has 60 days from then, from determining the project plan's complete to either approve or disapprove the project. We've had a number of these project plans submitted and approved for our other communities, and we have a number of them that we're continuing to work with CARB on kind of receiving their approval so that we can move forward. And so the three kind of categories that we're looking at for our SERP incentive measures are the measures, the SERP measures that have no program plans required. They can be funded now. The second bucket would be where there are project plans required, and we need to develop and submit those project plans to CARB for approval. If it's a project that we currently don't operate as a district, we would need our board's kind of approval to launch the program. We've had to do that recently with vegetative barriers and our school air filtration and other new programs that have come out of the 617 process. And then the third bucket would be SERP measures where we have, where a program plan would be required, and we've already received approval from CARB for other SERPs. So we might have SERP incentives, project plans for measures that are already approved by CARB for Fresno and Shafter that are also in the Stockton SERP. And CARB has kind of developed a little bit more streamlined project plan review process that we can go through. And so in some ways, the Stockton community kind of certainly benefits from, some of the work that's already been done by potentially going through a little bit more of a streamlined project plan review process, and we can get those types of projects launched a little bit faster than we otherwise would have been. And so the next few slides, I kind of want to go through some of the projects that we think can be funded sort of right away. And, we want to get your feedback and input on some of this stuff, but these are projects that can potentially move forward very quickly. The first category in the school subcommittee bucket would be school bus replacements, as well as the air filtration projects for public schools. And we can work closely with Stockton Unified on this. I think they have expressed interest in electric school buses. But the idea under that measure, you're probably well aware, is to replace some of their old diesel buses with electric technologies. The second category, which we didn't have a subcommittee identified for this category, but the rail car mover, switcher, locomotive replacement is another one that's sort of pre-approved with under the CAP guidelines. And we've been in some conversations and heard some feedback from Central Cal Traction in Stockton. Under this potential SERP measure, they're looking at demoing a new Tier 4 locomotive, which is the cleanest emissions standard available for locomotives. They're looking at demoing that up in Stockton. And if it works for their needs, they're looking at replacing 4 of their switcher locomotives, which operate up there in Stockton, with these new Tier 4 locomotives. So it would bring some of the cleanest locomotive switcher technology to Stockton, hopefully in relatively short kind of time frames. So we will keep the committee updated on that process. They're going to hopefully be able to start demoing that in the next few months. The next bucket would be SERP measures that require project plans and CARB approval. These would include things under the heavy duty truck section, including the truck rerouting study, heavy duty truck charging infrastructure, truck idling plugins, to support zero emission truck or transport refrigeration unit technology. We would require a project plan for the bike path infrastructure measure that's within the SERP. And a new one that we haven't done yet that's within the Stockton SERP is this residential air filtration measure. which I think will be a great option for Stockton residents. It requires us to go through the project plan process in order to spend those funds. And that's an example of a program that we don't currently operate at the district that would ultimately need our governing board's full approval prior to launch. And then some of the other measures that would require a project plan include the heavy duty truck replacement options with zero and near zero emission technology, our tune in tune up events, which are passenger vehicle repairs. And then in addition, it would be our passenger vehicle replacement program, as well as a car sharing program that you have in your SERP for development. And then the last bucket would be projects, SERP measures that do require project plans, and CARB has already approved these for other SERPs. And some of the SERP measures from the other slide will eventually kind of move into this bucket, but this is what we have in terms of a CARB approval right now for project plans. And that would include urban greening and vegetative barriers, training for EV mechanics, our electric vehicle charging infrastructure program that we have, our burn cleaner wood burning device replacement program, as well as our residential and commercial lawn and garden programs, where the idea with those is to replace gas powered equipment with electric pieces of equipment that are operating in the community. And so those are really the three different buckets that we're kind of looking at and where some of these measures fall. That's kind of the end of the presentation that I have, but I'm sure that there's lots of questions and happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
And maybe before to provide a little extra context, Erica, the reason that I few of you were at the agenda setting meeting where we talked about this presentation in particular and why it was so important. We talked at our last Stockton meeting and got a lot of great feedback and posted, and maybe I'll have Heather, someone drop in the chat from the steering committee documents that link to all the feedback that we got from all the different steering committee members on the subcommittee breakouts and all of the recommended partners, both technical and implementation partners. And it was really important to the folks that were on the agenda setting committee to really make sure that we as a group understood where each of these measures stood in terms of the subcommittees that we've sort of identified and what sort of stage they could be at or already at in terms of implementation. Because where we start on these subcommittees is going to be a little bit different for each of these. So a prime example is this measure that we see right here where it says Urban Greening Subcommittee, or we can call it Trees Subcommittee. I don't know that the name is exactly important. I think we called it Trees in the calendar invite for tomorrow is a prime example of a measure that fits in this bucket, where tomorrow's meeting, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to how the meeting is run and how we want to facilitate subcommittees. But when it comes down to the measure, we as an air district have a lot of groundwork that's already been done in other SERPs that we want to share with you all that can help expedite how we get urban greening complete. Whereas a prime example, Brian, actually, if you could flip to the slide before this, of the residential air filtration, as Brian just mentioned, that's one where the subcommittee, the first few meetings are going to be very different. It's going to be a lot more brainstorming. We've never done it before. We want to hear a lot. It's kind of building it from the ground up. And then the slide before this was a prime example, and Brian even showed that example of, if you can go, oh yeah, back one more slide, Brian. This slide now is a perfect example of things, even though we have a subcommittee identified for schools, for these school type projects rather, the subcommittee isn't going to be focusing on program plans or project plans because those don't need to happen. We're going to be focusing more on implementation. So that was sort of the main reason that we had this explanation today, and wanted to have this discussion to make sure we sort of all understood generally where we were, and then we can talk here in a minute about moving some subcommittees forward. Thanks, Erica.
Excellent. Thank you, Jess. Okay, so I know that there was another hand before we even got to this part. So I will say, Douglas, let's have you go. And then there was someone else that raised their hand. I want to make sure you also get a chance to ask your question if it hasn't already been answered. Please feel free to raise that hand again. But Douglas, please go ahead and ask your question or make your comment.
Yeah, the comment is that I didn't quite understand what you were saying because you were talking really fast, and then there was a lot of questions that popped up in my mind that is kind of overwhelming regarding air no, what was it? Can you go back to the slide where it says residential? Where does it say?
The residential
committee. Okay, the residential air filtration. Are they? Don't they? I believe this is going to be the first time that the air quality district is having that particular item in it, because I know that the PG&E does that, because I received an email from them that they're going to do some, we call it, what's the word I'm looking, sealing the rod, making, have a gold pane, double pane window, and anything that
weatherization, I think is
that's the one. Thank you. So is that almost similar to what you discussing the resident strategy, the residential air infiltration?
So I think, Doug, under this measure it's something similar, but this would be looking to replace people's air filters in their homes with cleaner or more efficient filters. So if, for instance, they had a MERV 8 filter in their home, and wanted to get something that was, cleaned like a MERV 13, so it was a finer filter, there could be a rebate or some other process for helping to offset the costs of those more costly filters, but they do a better job of cleaning the air in your home. So part of the goal of the subcommittee would be to help define, what the parameters of that program really look like. We have some general concepts that are outlined within the SERP itself. The subcommittee will get to a finer detail, which will then be incorporated into the project plan that we submit to CARB for their review and approval. So that process is really going to define what the program's ultimately going to look like.
Okay, we forgot with that program what it's like. Are you referring to like air conditioning and central heating filtering infiltration or that or what? Because I'm not.
It would be the filters that's within a home's air conditioning system.
And it could look like, just so you know, there have been discussions. Again, I think Brian hit the nail on the head here, is the subcommittee is where this exact discussion will happen. We'll throw out some ideas, definitely work with all the partners and then start identifying or inviting rather all the partners you've already identified. I think, Doug, to your point, you're talking about another program that sounds similar, because it could, maybe it's standalone air filtration units if it's not about connecting to the HVAC system. There are a couple of opportunities and different ways we could do it. And that's a prime example of why this subcommittee, especially subcommittees that fit in this bucket, where these don't yet have either approved program plans, but maybe we're working on approval for a different committee, or in this is actually a pretty unique case where there's not anything like this in the other SERPs that we're working on project plan approvals for yet.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thanks all. Are there any other questions or comments for the Air District team regarding this sort of process around how you will all start to explore your subcommittee work and the measures that are going to need either project plans or other levels of approval? Any other questions about that or comments about that? I see Jonathan's hand.
I'm pretty sure we're probably going to be talking about it during the, well, actually, technically, I don't know where the air filtration, I guess residence, there it is. Geez, I'm kind of blind. But I think the question would be, maybe we'll talk about it when we're in the subcommittee, but maybe if Brian, if you know offhand, would it make sense when it comes to delivering these air filters, would it be more through a rebate sort of aspect, or would it be more, is there a legal standing? Is that, if that's something that could be looked at from CARB side and our side and your guys' side, if it's legal that we can already pay for the filters and then send it out for free as like a donation sort of base where people just pick it up and sign up and then pick it up?
Yeah, I think the subcommittee process will be perfect for kind of brainstorming some of those ideas. And, you know, if we have questions like that, you know, offhand, I'm not sure how that process would work on CARB's end, but I think we have a lot of flexibility to try and design a program that's going to work best for the community. And if there's, you know, kind of a third party that's responsible for, you know, maybe distributing filters or something like that, I think that could be an option. You know, the difficult part is it seems like everybody's home maybe has a slightly different filter, or if we're, you know, doing portable units, there might be different ones for different size homes or some, you know, there could be a lot of variables there, but I think that's a perfect type of question for the subcommittee process. And you know, forgive me if I'm wrong a little bit, Jess, here, but I think part of the discussion we might have at some point today is how we're going to roll out those subcommittees and kind of, you know, when we might start scheduling them. There's a tree subcommittee meeting tomorrow, but I think, you know, in the short term here, some of these are going to be kind of rolling out depending on priorities and things like that.
Absolutely. And I'll go into this before we go to Margot's question, just saying, and maybe this touches on a little bit of what you just mentioned, is we did that. You guys all recall we did a poll, or hopefully you do recall. If not, maybe I'll once again ask someone on my team to drop in the poll results that also live on our website. But using the poll where we did some prioritization right after we adopted the SERP on what all of those measures in those buckets of measures looked like in your community's priority, as well as the individual measures within those kind of bigger categories looked like. So we knew that vegetative barriers and urban greening and the trees were highest, which is why we, right off the bat, when we saw that was a subcommittee, you know, we wanted to get that scheduled. I will just say out loud, but certainly again, based on feedback and discussion today, it's subject to change, but just knowing basically where we've been and where things ranked in the priority, EV mechanic training, so the workforce development or EV mechanic subcommittee was also ranked very high, as well as the truck reroute study, which is, as you can see on this slide, actually is under sort of that heavy duty truck subcommittee based on all of your feedback. I think it's clear to most of us the capacity. I think from an air district perspective, you know, we'll do whatever we need to do to work with you all, but we don't want to overwhelm all of you with all 8 or 10 subcommittees this week or next week. So I think rolling them out in order of priority and then having ongoing subcommittee meetings is certainly what we would think would be a suggestion, but we're definitely open today to hear some of that feedback as well. And then one last thing I'll say is when it comes to scheduling, you saw it this last time, and it's our commitment moving forward, is we will doodle and send out the invite to all subcommittees, to all people on the CSC. So you don't have to worry about signing up and then worrying about whether or not you're on the distribution list. You can track along, even if you don't necessarily have capacity to participate. You should still have on your calendar all of the subcommittees that will be scheduled, which I will tell you will be eventually a good number. You know that we have an air monitoring one coming up soon. Like I said, with some support from you all today, we would really like to move forward with an EV mechanic workforce development subcommittee very soon, as well as a truck subcommittee very soon. So that would be the recommendation there, knowing that eventually we have to roll all of these out ASAP.
Thank you, Jess. And thank you, Margot, for your patience. Go ahead and ask your question or make your comment.
On that point about the subcommittees, okay, twice I've heard saying that there's a subcommittee meeting tomorrow. I have received no notice about a subcommittee meeting for tomorrow. Am I just missing it? I've looked back in my emails. I don't see anything.
Is everyone else having the same? There's a subcommittee meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I did speak with a couple folks today that did have it on their calendar, but it's certainly don't have it on your calendar either. Uh-oh.
Looks like a few people might not have received it. Was it a meeting notice or an email?
It was both, but I will resend it right now.
Thank you, Zong. Yep.
Thank you, Zong.
Thank you. And I'm glad we said that out loud. It was based on, we did schedule it based on doodle poll. So the majority of people were available. So it looks like, yeah. Well, I'll definitely send one. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. Was that the only question, Margot, just about that tree subcommittee? Great question. Any other comments before we move into our next section? Well, as you all know, though, this is something that will continue to come up. This is really the beginning of, I think, what you're going to see as a process document that you're going to be able to work through and see, you know, which topics, which measures fall under which subcommittees. And as Jess mentioned, she's going to start rolling them out in a way that hopefully doesn't overload your calendars, but there are some subcommittees that are going to have some activities that are coming in very short order. So you will likely see quite a few requests for doodle information and scheduling information to get those off the ground. So things are moving from an implementation standpoint. It's all very exciting, but it's also going to be pretty time consuming in terms of just coordination. So certainly something to keep an eye out for. And it looks like we're getting some comments in the chat about the email received, but no meeting invitation. So Dong's going to resend that CSC subcommittee meeting notice for tomorrow's meeting on trees, and then additional ones will come as this process gets refined. So thanks, everyone. All right, we're going to keep moving because I think we're done with this section, but we're going to continue in a similar theme, I think, because the next agenda item I think is related to this last one. It's specifically about the tracking and the reporting and the accountability. And I think Jess is going to walk you through the tracker table that's going to help you keep track of the CERT measures and their implementation status. So in addition to kind of how you're going to work through the implementation, she's going to make sure you know how to see where you are in that, especially if you're not part of the subcommittee or if you're not on every one, you might want to understand where other pieces are. So this might be a great way for you to keep track of the larger picture while you're working on some of the smaller details individually.
Great. Thank you, Erica, and thank you all. One of the things that we have, again, sort of there's a benefit in a lot of ways to having us worked out some kinks with earlier communities, is we received a lot of feedback and went through various iterations of a way to make sure we could provide regular updates to you all about all of the measures without taking up, you know, the entire meeting, every CSC meeting to go down every single measure. There needed to be, we wanted to make sure there was a centralized way where you could go and click anytime and get details and find relevant links about each measure, what happened maybe at the most recent subcommittee, and where you can find information about how progress is moving forward. So what I'm about to share with you is a draft version of that same type of table for Stockton. And I'll share a couple of things briefly. This is going to be a lot of detail eventually, and have a lot of words and status updates that are very detailed. And as you work through this, it might seem, and we did receive some feedback from your great co-host today, that this is something this is like an in the weeds update table, and I'll walk you through it here in a moment. But I will say, we don't have one to share today, but we will, by the next meeting, also share with you something that's a little more high level, a little more visual, and it will be more of like, someone put it, I thought it was a great term, and Jonathan, I think you said this, so stop me if I'm wrong, or I'll give you credit anyway. Someone said they wanted to see something that was like a thermometer, as if you're doing a fundraiser and you fill it in with the color as you work your way to get all of the money funded or spent. We're going to do something similar as we actually move forward and fund these measures. So you will also see a really quick visual, but we also wanted to make sure people had a way to understand the details of the measures, where we are, what's been allocated, how much we've spent, how much we've reduced, what the status is, and of course, any relevant links or things that we can send you off to if you want more information. So what we've done here, and we're happy to take feedback on this, is divided things by the subcommittees that were recommended, shown you where in the SERP these measures you can provide more detail. We outline basically what Brian just outlined for you, whether or not a program plan is approved or is required. So yes means it is required, so we need to make sure that there's a program plan. What we've allocated and how many units that would fund. How much we've spent to date, which obviously is going to be 0 since we just kicked this process off, what the target reductions are for the measure, and then what the status update is. And so you'll start to see this be a lot more filled in. You'll see a lot of bullet points here, and you'll see a lot of relevant links will start to drop. We will update this, and I'm just going to slowly scroll down. We will update this every month before the CSC meeting. So before the CSC meeting, you should be able to catch yourself up with what went on this past month, what subcommittees met. You'll have links to the most recent subcommittee meeting. And as we start to fund these measures, you'll start to see, again, what that funding to date is. And then, as I mentioned, you will also see a much more high level visual tracker that will show you sort of just a simple bar of what we need to fund and maybe a shaded in amount of that has been funded for each of these measures as well. So we wanted to just honestly really walk you through this, get any feedback that you had in terms of whether you think this is a useful shorthand tool for you as a CSC member to maybe track for yourself, to communicate to others that maybe want to be a part of it, to point people to. Maybe you are on the EV mechanics subcommittee and you want to point someone to this tracker. This will live on the website. And point someone to where the status updates are, where the links are, how much maybe we funded if it comes down to something that they want to know kind of what the next step is. Now this includes, I wanted to outline this a little bit for you too. You've noticed it includes more than just incentives. So this will also include all of the regulatory and enforcement committee updates. So if it's evaluation of rules, if it's enhanced inspections of stationary sources. As an example, in Shafter and in Fresno, we have a very similar measure where we have enhanced inspections. We update every month what those enhanced inspection frequencies have yielded, if anything, if there's maybe a particular violation or any other follow-up we need to do with enforcement. You will see a regular update on enforcement activities. So definitely more than just incentives tracking here. And then, of course, this isn't just for everything that has a subcommittee. One of the, I would say the most important thing sometimes when it comes to these things are the things we know we aren't meeting on subcommittees about, but we will update you briefly but regularly about in the CSC meetings, are all of these other measures that we know sometimes are ready to go or we're about to launch based on a project plan approval. You will be able to see that update here. A prime example, I always go to this example because I think it's the simplest, is we are going to eventually launch a residential lawn and garden equipment program. This has already been approved in Shafter and in Fresno, and it's a district program that exists. So once it exists in a different way, you know, the difference is that here we're funding 100% of the lawn and garden equipment. I will acknowledge that. But the concept is the same in that once we get the approval from CARB, we're going to start working with you all. We're going to outreach and we're going to try funding as many of these as we can, you know, as quickly as possible. So you should start to see the numbers here tick up and start to see actual emissions reductions happening in your neighborhood. So it seems like a lot because there are a lot of measures. Sometimes when you scroll through this, it's a kind of a daunting task, and it's really nice that we have, as based on all of your input, broken these down into kind of bite-sized chunks in the subcommittees. But again, just because it's not in a subcommittee doesn't mean we won't have regular updates, regular resources, links, and feedback for you all on this tracker.
Awesome, Jess. Well, this is apparently, it's like a one-stop shop for everyone to be able to see in real time, or at least updated in advance of your CSC monthly meetings, how you're doing on all of the implementation, what the status is, because there are so many moving parts and many things are moving in parallel paths. So this is the one stop, and it will be just on the website, so you'll be able to see that. And it sounds like you'll be able to share it externally, even beyond the CSC, if you wanted to send it out publicly to some of your stakeholders within your organizations or community organizations or other residents. It sounds like it's something that other community members and other interested people could refer to say what's going on with the Stockton CSC.
Absolutely.
Great. And it looks like Ed is happy with this document. Love to get other feedback from you all and say if there's anything that you think would be a good addition, refinement, and just general feedback. I do see Taylor's hand, and I also, Jonathan, see your question in the chat, which I will flag in just a second. Hey, Taylor.
Hey, thank you for putting this together. This looks great. I think it's going to go a long way for like visibility and like keeping us all like showing up at these meetings, like just not having to go through each one of these things. So I think that's a great idea. I do have a couple quick questions. So I saw like the status column. So recognizing that some of these measures have like different like roles they have to like get through, right? Some like need CARB approval, some might even need Air District Board approval in addition to that. Is that an appropriate place to track all of that? Or is it more about like the status of the discussion of like implementation? Or is it
right?
both?
Great question. So one of those, but I acknowledge that we don't. So we have this program plan approved. I think what we'll do is something I'm noticing here as I was scrolling through it. We have this labeled slightly differently in Fresno and in Shafter, and maybe we can be clearer here, where at least this column can be your one-stop shop for if it's approved or pending or not, is what I'm kind of hearing. So we could say pending, submitted to CARB, and we can even put a date so you kind of know. But to your question, we don't have a place in here for district approval. I do think status updates will include probably both of those things, but also even more details like subcommittee met and is waiting for CSC to vote on decision A, is sort of what we're thinking there.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And my only other question was about, I know a lot of this is predicated on like who are our implementation partners, and like that's a part of like the decision making that these subcommittees do. Is there a role for like columns to understand like who are the implementation partners that we're looking at, who is confirmed, and like also who are like the technical partners who are advising on this right now?
That's a great point. I think that could be a really useful if everyone thinks that, we always try to balance like too much on one thing, but I do think whether it's here or we find a creative way to like click a link and you can go straight to what those partners are. I think adding that information is a really, really great idea.
Great. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Jess. And I see a hand from Jeff Wingfield. And then I think what we're hoping to gather before we close out this item, just for everyone else, is to note, do you like the general layout? Do you like the content? Are you finding that there might be some other pieces of information that could be good for you all to have? And then one thing I'll ask too, Jess, is if this is the first time that the CSC is seeing this draft, did you mention that you will send it out to them so they can maybe get closer eyes on it and maybe give you feedback at another time as well?
No, great point. I did not mention that, and we will definitely do that.
Excellent. So Jess, go ahead and ask your question or make your comment.
Great, thank you. First of all, it looks really good at first glance. So looking forward to looking into it a little bit further. And forgive me if you guys have already talked about this, but how are the subcommittees going to be formed? Has that been discussed?
So what we've done, and tomorrow will be a good example of how we move forward once we sort of schedule one. But what we've done with subcommittees is there were a couple of requests in a lot of our recent discussions to make sure that subcommittees were available and open to everyone on the CSC. And so what we've done, instead of like signing up or assigning folks to be on subcommittees, we've just decided that we will doodle the whole group, invite everyone. And again, I think we've resent the email, so everyone should have the fresh calendar invite to tomorrow's subcommittee. And then tomorrow's subcommittee is actually going to, and if you recall, we adopted our charter last time or the time before. Sometimes time blends, and I'm not sure if it was our last meeting or the meeting before, but we officially adopted the charter. And in that charter, there is actually an entire new attachment that talks a little bit about governance of subcommittees. And one of those is sort of like self-facilitation. It's really community-led. And so I think from there, it's maybe subcommittee by subcommittee on how the process will move forward, how often things are scheduled, and who's sort of setting that agenda. But in terms of what we've promised to do as the Air District is still be the information blast that we have been, which is invite everyone and anyone to the subcommittees. And then to Jonathan's point, make sure we bring any implementation partners, whether they're currently sitting on the CSC or they're identified by the subcommittee, to be a part of that program. Again, reviewing the charter and making sure that we're kind of in accordance with how we as a group want to move forward with inviting those partners.
And then just to clarify this implementation partner category, Jess, are you saying that it's people that might have technical expertise? They could be, important for providing technical details, but not necessarily just the general public coming into the committees?
Right. Yeah, I'd imagine. And again, all of our meetings are public meeting. Even this is a public meeting. We have public folks here. But in terms of being a part of the CSC, I would say technical or those implementation partners that you identified, right? So a prime example of that is the trees. There were some technical partners, people who were like foresters or involved in tree planting or watering, or technical people that are involved in irrigation. But the implementation partners that we also want to make sure are there are people that are involved perhaps in the city or at school districts or places where we know we're going to be planting trees. So those would be kind of the difference between the two. And I think both of those, I mean, I don't want to speak for the subcommittee, but I imagine based on all of the feedback we got from everyone that both types of folks would be welcome to attend and participate and provide input.
Great, thank you. And I do see Margot's hand. Margot.
Hi, yeah, yes, I did get the email now. Thank you very much. And I'm, as things go on, I'm sure this spreadsheet will be amended and changed over time. A lot of these issues takes outreach, and I know we have an outreach subcommittee, and I think there needs to be a column where we indicate how we're handling outreach, even when it comes to replacing lawn equipment, residential lawn equipment. You said you wanted to get started quickly. Well, how are we going to let people know?
Yes, I'm glad you said that. And I think one of the things we found, and I think this comes with some time once we start getting going, and maybe what we'll do is not only will we send out this draft, but maybe we'll link you to what the Fresno and Shafter trackers look like. What we've done for outreach, and Heather, stop me if I'm wrong, we've actually, in that relevant links, we tend to link people, and we'll make it very clear, like click here if you want to apply, but also click here if you want to see a billboard we posted in your area. So there have been a lot of places we've found where we can link to the outreach, actual outreach we've been doing. But also, to your point, I agree, the outreach is super important for both things that have subcommittees, things that don't. That outreach committee in general, I know will definitely be important. And actually, to that point, definitely something we want to probably also start to get moving on. I would say all of these as soon as possible, but definitely once we get some program plans approved, we need that outreach committee more than ever to make sure we know how to implement them and reach out and get people participating.
Bingo. Excellent. I see a hand from Douglas. Hi, Douglas.
Oh, okay, that's great, Jessica. I would like to know if it was follow through with the question of Jeff regarding the subcommittee. Are anybody going to be facilitating that? If there are going to be people who might agree or disagree, or how they're going to delegate concerns, whatever may that concern, priority, places that, what's grounded or urban, what part of the city needed for more needed than others and things like that. So that's what's my bigger concern about that. How the subcommittee going to be oversight that particular meeting. That's all. Thank you.
So I know that Heather dropped into the chat the charter. And if you recall, last time we talked in pretty good detail about attachment C, which is that subcommittee part of the charter that governs subcommittee roles and responsibilities. And in there, we talked about a couple of options. The first is that, at least on the onset, the expectation and responsibility of the CSC members would be to, we wanted these to be community-led meetings. And so they could volunteer to do the facilitation themselves. Now, the district will attend all of these meetings. I imagine, although we're doing the transition now, we can work with Harder and Company to attend these meetings. So in terms of the way that, a prime example is the air monitoring subcommittee, where we have that 1 hour, one-off meeting. It could operate like that. If the volunteer facilitator wants to run the meeting and work with you all to establish an agenda, we would just be there to do a lot of the technical work as needed. But it also does say in here that if someone doesn't volunteer, or say as a subcommittee, you all agree that you want it to be led by the facilitation team or by the district or by whomever, that there is also a line in here in your charter that says that the meeting facilitator may reach out if no one volunteers themselves to have the district or someone else fill in as a facilitator. So I think it's pretty open, Douglas, and definitely sounds like it's up to the committee, probably on a committee by committee basis on how they want to operate.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments about this tracker document and sort of the next steps related to this really important document that I think is going to keep you all on track? And it's a dynamic document. It seems like something that's going to continue to be refined as you start using it and as the air district start seeing what kinds of things you might need, and maybe even seeing best practices across other air districts and within their other communities, seeing what little pieces might work well. So certainly you want to get to a place where it's static, but I think you're at the stage now where it's a great time to provide input, either now or following up. So Jess is going to be sending, or someone from the air district is going to be sending you all a copy of this that you can look at with closer eyes and get a little more sense of how it all works and how you might interact with it. And then I think that the action item for you all is to provide your feedback on it, pro, con, and or otherwise. If you like it, please share. And if you have any recommendations for edits or adjustments or refinements to the layout or the content or the way it's presented, this is a great time to provide that. Any final feedback or thoughts about this before we move to our next agenda item? Excellent. All right, we'll keep moving. And we're going next into standing updates, and we're a little ahead of schedule, which is fantastic, because I know we're losing a member pretty soon. The standing updates that we have today are air monitoring, and then updates from CARB, and then just a real quick reminder of the tree subcommittee, which we've already talked about, so there might be nothing new there. But we're going to start with air monitoring updates, and I think we've got Chai on the line to give a brief update and overview on the activities related to the air monitoring in Stockton. Chai, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Erica.
Hi.
And good evening, everyone. So as a lot of you already know, we've been working closely with Stockton Unified to install air monitors at various schools in the community, and all the way to the development of a license agreement and taking that to their board. And so this item was brought up to the board twice, got voted down, and some of the primary concerns have been over the roof stability and the costs that the school may have to bear. And then after that part of it, we had a CSC subcommittee meeting about 4 weeks ago to address this, and it was agreed that we would continue pursuing that path to try to get it installed at the school and work with the school on that, which we call Plan A. And also to start looking at alternative sites, which would be Plan B at other locations. I just wanted to shout out to Matt Holmes to thank him again for helping us get an early jump start on this by providing some potential sites. So we've included that in there in our efforts in this past couple of weeks. So in preparation for the school board's meeting, which is the meeting was last week, and so 2 weeks ago, we worked with the school on that. We worked very closely with the superintendent to fully address all their concerns. And so there were several questions that they gave us, and we provided answers to and clarified. And really the main things were clarifying that, that the air monitors do not have to be placed on the roofs. If they have concern over that, we don't have to place it on the roof. We can find other locations within the school grounds to place the monitors there. And we also clarified that there will absolutely be no cost to the schools. The maintenance would be handled by us. The utilities, electricity, and all of that will be done by us. Really, the only thing that we need from the school is just access to the monitors. And so there was a lot of work put into this, a lot of effort onto that. And especially even also want to recognize Maria Mendez of this CSC as well, who's a member of the CSC. Throughout this entire process, she really fought hard for us to push this effort forward. And so unfortunately, the meeting was last Tuesday. The school board meeting was last Tuesday. And despite all this effort, the item was not even included in their board meeting. And we have yet to receive any feedback from the superintendent. And so it's not really, we're not really getting much traction with the school. So we have been looking at alternative sites. We have been contacting them. So for example, like at the Hagen Museum, we've got some good feedback from there. They're gonna have some internal discussions on that. St. George was pretty enthusiastic about it. And so we provided them with more information. Same thing with the fairgrounds as well. They'll need to check with the feasibility of it with their maintenance, but they seem open to it, and we're still waiting for feedback from the other potential sites. So that's where we're at right now. I'm not sure how far the school will efforts will go at this point. It's been pretty challenging to get this through them. But right now we're going to shoot for Plan B and try to get these alternative sites and see if we can get some of these moving. So yep, that's it for my update. Be happy to answer any questions or also get feedback from the CSC as well.
And I was just about to say, and look, Zong just dropped it in, but if you could let us know by tomorrow, definitely everything Chai just said, we want to update in a little bit more of a visual detail. We'll have a little bit of a map to talk about Plan B in some more detail. So please fill out that doodle poll so we can get a subcommittee meeting scheduled.
So it sounds like there was some unfortunate developments as it relates to the school, the air monitors on the school board's not super supportive of the effort at the moment. There's still momentum around trying to have them adjust their approach, but right now they're looking at alternate sites. So certainly want to keep the momentum on that primary preference location, but it looks like we might need to have a Plan B and a Plan C. So definitely want to flag that and thank all of you that did support that effort and have been working behind the scenes to make that happen. I do see a hand from Douglas. Douglas, you have a comment or question?
A question to Clay. You say Plan B, Plan C. Do you have any of those already for the air monitor from the school? If let's A didn't go well, so Plan B, Plan C. What other sites have you selected? Are we going to go again, picking the same site from different areas that we have to go to again and pick other sites or similar sites that may not be the school, but in different area? That's what I'm asking.
I think
yeah, we've already identified some of those sites, and I think in the next subcommittee meeting is where we can show the map and show it to all of you to get some further feedback onto it. But we are trying to find it close to the original sites that we were trying to get to, and there's quite a few that are really pretty close by to all of those sites, and we can discuss those in further detail in the subcommittee meeting.
So there are other sites that aren't the schools that have been considered and are on the list. And at the subcommittee meeting, and it looks like there's a doodle poll that's out to figure out when the time and date of that next subcommittee is. But at that subcommittee meeting, it looks like Chai and his team will go over what some of those alternate sites are and help and I think the subcommittee will be helping to choose kind of what that Plan B, C, D ends up being, if needed.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments related to air monitoring before we move to the CARB update? All right, I think we have Scott on the line with the CARB update. Scott, are you here?
Hi, yes,
are you able...
good evening.
Hello.
Hi there.
Good to see you.
Yes, you as well. So yes, Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board, the assigned liaison for the Stockton AB617 community. I do have a few updates that are just really updates to the same updates I gave you last month. The first is on the AB617 convening. For those of you who are on the steering committee, you should be familiar with the convening by now, but it's basically an opportunity for participants in the AB617 process to reflect on implementation and envision ways to foster collaboration. The invitations for the convening have been sent via email from the district. And so if you have not yet, would ask you to please use that link to register as soon as possible if you plan to participate in the convening. The sessions are on Monday, September 27th and Wednesday, September 29th, and that's 5 to 8 p.m. each day. If you are a CSC member and don't recall receiving a link to register, just drop me an email and I can get it to you. I will drop my email into the chat once I get through chatting here. A couple of more updates on ongoing projects I'm working on related to the committee. One is the California Environmental Quality Act Stockton Community Capacity Building, which was a request from the committee. We did actually have a meeting with the Department of Justice Environmental Justice Unit last Thursday. Mary Elizabeth helped us out. Jonathan helped us out. We had a couple of other community folks there to give us some good information, some good input on things that they thought were important from a content perspective, logistically how to handle it. So at this point, our next step is that we are going to, and this was really kind of the thoughts initially are that this might be a great thing to kind of break out into different training modules and smaller sound bites, maybe for a couple of different audiences. We are internally going to meet with the Department of Justice again, take all of the great input we received from the folks that helped us come up with some design concepts, and then kind of reach back out with a little bit of a proposal to that same group and make sure that we heard them correctly. So just want to let you all know that that is moving forward, and we're hoping to have something that will be of interest really to everybody on the steering committee to help you get more involved in commenting from various different perspectives on the land use decisions being made in the Stockton area. And then finally, this is actually a little bit later on the agenda, but I'll go ahead and tackle it now. The Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment, or what we call OEHA. We had a little bit of challenges getting calendars together for a couple of weeks there with vacations, but we did actually recently meet with them. So Carb and Jessica Olson and the OEHA staff and management all got together. We discussed what the health effects kind of workshop might look like, or the presentation might look like. And so we're just continuing to refine that internally directly between the Air Resources Board and OEHA. And we hope to have a date and some proposals for content together here in the next week or two. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that those things are moving forward, certainly not at breakneck speed, but we're doing our best to keep those things moving forward, to be responsive to your requests. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Scott. What questions do we have for Scott, if any, or comments? I don't see any right now. I think no questions means we got the memo, and we've got the notes. So thank you, Scott, and thank you, Chai. And it looks like there's some comments in the chat specifically related to the school district work, and certainly gratitude for those that are already and have been working on this and doing so much diligently to move that forward. And there's certainly some interest in having the Boggs Tract community be part of this effort in some way, because I know that was a big priority for this CSC. All right, well, without any additional updates, I think the last update that was on standing updates was actually related to the tree subcommittee, which is already now confirmed for tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And I think maybe even during this meeting, you all received an updated or resent meeting notice, so you should have it on your calendar. And certainly we are excited to really begin that vegetation management planning and urban greening discussions. So as Jess said, the name of that subcommittee may be inconsistent between what it's being called for tomorrow and what's on the tracker, but I think they're covering similar things in those incentive measures. And then Scott did put in the chat, so please email him if you're a steering committee member and you don't remember getting an invitation to that AB617 convening for September. End of September, they'll be having that convening, and they're looking for significant participation and visioning content from the steering committees. All right, I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to continue with our wrap up, which is our next step. Let me go ahead and move to the next section. One of the things that we like to do at the end of this is just encourage anyone that would like to volunteer to be a community co-host, so that you can continue to refine how the meetings are run and the role that you play. Certainly Jonathan was our community co-host today, and we've had a number of you play a role as community co-hosts over the last few months and certainly over the last year. So if there's any of you that want to volunteer, please do raise your Zoom hand, unmute yourself, or write your name in the chat now. Or you can always email the Air District in between meetings. We always do love to have community co-hosts and input, especially behind the scenes input. Even if you don't hear them talk very much during the meeting, there's always that input that's placed in kind of the development of the meeting and how it runs and what role they play. I know that as Scott mentioned, that OEHA meeting about health effects, that scheduling is in progress. So keep an eye out for that scheduling when it gets done. Certainly the CSC will be one of the first to be notified. And the next meeting of this CSC is in a month in October. So a lot of activity happening between now and October 6th, but we definitely want to make sure that you're keeping track of the emails, because there are quite a few flying that are going to be coming about subcommittees and certainly doodle polls related to that. Sounds like you're going to get a lot of information from CARB about not only their AB617 consultation meeting, but also possibly that OEHA meeting. And then there's just a lot of other things happening, activities happening. And one of the things that we like to do at this meeting is to make sure that there are real-time notes taken during our discussion to make sure that we have a record sort of that immediate action and accountability piece. And so what I will do now is share my screen so you can see all the things we talked about today, and that specifically refer to the things that are going to be done by any of the parties on this line. So I'll do the screen share. You can keep me honest and tell me if we forgot anything or misrepresented anything. Hopefully you can see a document here, and if it needs to be any bigger, let me know. This is just high level, some of the things that you all talked about. You wanted to resend the tree subcommittee meeting notice to the entire CSC. I think that's already taken place. So that's a check mark on the Air District side. And then just going forward, know that every CSC member will get every subcommittee scheduling opportunity, so the entire group's informed and that you're able to participate if you want to and are able to. Please, CSC members, provide feedback to the Air District about the subcommittee plans and the proposed approach that was outlined in that CERT measure implementation section of our agenda today. There was a pretty long PowerPoint that kind of talked about how the subcommittees were going to be structured and what content of the incentive content was going to be built up underneath those subcommittees, what kind of topics those subcommittees would tackle. If you have any thoughts about that, share that with the Air District. And then the Air District's going to send that CERT tracker document that you all looked at. They're going to send it to you electronically so you can have it a little closer to your eyes. Look at that really closely so you can provide any feedback if you have any, and that should be sent to the Air District before the next CSC meeting so that any updates that need to be made can be made in enough time so that you can start using that document as you begin your implementation process. A couple of the things that we heard today about that tracker that could be updated would be the reference links to implementation partners, include how the CSC is going to handle outreach, maybe mirroring what's being done with the Fresno communities and the Shafter trackers. Those are examples of slightly different ways that they've laid out that information, visualized it. So there might be something we can learn there. So Jess is going to play with that, maybe send that to you. And then the last thing we heard today was for you to complete that doodle poll related to air monitoring subcommittees, because that's something that's definitely moving. You, I think, want to get some feedback about when you can meet so that you can talk about some of the issues with the school district. And then that plan B, C, D, if we don't get those monitors on the school sites as we'd originally hoped. And there does need to be a response to that doodle poll by 5 o'clock tomorrow. So what did I forget? Anything missing, anything misrepresented? Love to hear those and make sure that this is accurate. Jonathan likes the action item list. Happy to share that with Harder moving forward. Hi, Taylor, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'll just add on that third to last item that I'd reference implementation partners and technical partners as well.
Sure thing. I'll do that right now.
Thanks.
Anything else that I didn't? My Zoom's a little slow, that I didn't reflect accurately or that is a little bit off. All right, seeing none, I will stop share and I'll make sure the Air District gets this like they always do. And then that'll just be a record for you all to remember what you should do and what they're going to do. And hopefully a lot of these things, like I said, are happening between meetings. So there's just a lot of activity as you move into implementation. I think there's a lot of benefit to this, the tracking certainly, but it's definitely something we want you all to be able to keep track of, and we're going to keep it as easy and simple as possible. All right, so with that, we will move into the public comments. Oh, actually, I see a hand from Gloria.
Yes, I just wanted to say, so since there is like a few people confused about the subcommittees, would it be useful to, or I think it would be useful to have information about them on the website where the participants are, and just like have information in there will be really accessible rather than having the information through emails that get lost. So, yeah.
I agree. I'll share my screen, but maybe this isn't quite the place. Tell me if this is, so up here, this is I was actually just about to share with you for a different reason from some great feedback we got about something else. This is the Stockton community page, and under other meetings, but maybe we make it clearer what this is. We do have agendas, we will have links to videos, and we will also have notes and summaries for all of those subcommittee meetings. So this is maybe a place right now where it exists, but maybe instead of other meetings, we can have these categorized so you can go straight to the category or the subcommittee and see all of the recent meetings for those categories. I'm wondering if that's a good place to start.
Yes, that's actually like, I was envisioning that. Thank you. That looks great. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. So the governance part's coming together really well. It looks like all the things that were developed, not only in the, you've got your charter, and now you're really working through the refinements on how it's all going to work. And it's really exactly what you should be doing right now. That's perfect. Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I also recommend when it comes to reaching out, because I have some ideas of folks that want to join subcommittees, is making sure that if it can be viewed on the front page instead of clicking through the little links. I mean, sometimes people might do it, but maybe it's best to like have it as like a, how do you say, as like a hyperlink on the front page, and then it'll go to the next page, but at least it's showcased there saying information, or so if you like to join this subcommittee, if you like to join this subcommittee, click here, just so that you can clearly see it on the page. Because I know Bay Area's, Bay Area's AB617 page, they update all the time the front page where it gives you links. It shows on the top, like, here's what's happened so far, then click this for more information, sort of thing.
Well, definitely, I think what we'll do, I'm wondering if we play around with all of these great ideas, we'll release it, get some more feedback and see if that works. Because I hear you, Jonathan, instead of, we have several subcommittees, so you'd have to scroll down to find one if they're going to be listed, even if they're categorized, but maybe across the top, we have a drop-down menu or a button you can click that drops you down, straight down to trees or whatever it is. So that's what I'm hearing. I think it's a great idea. And I'm seeing Heather nod her head. She has our web guru. It sits on Heather's team. And so
lots of ideas rolling through my head right now. We will definitely serve you and get this to where it is functional and simple. Absolutely.
I wanted to do one final shout out to actually Jonathan, who has lots of great ideas. When we met as a co-host sort of district meeting a couple weeks ago, his question to me was, well, why can't we have people sign up to get Stockton only emails if they're not on the CSC? And although we do have this contact page where you can click and kind of figure out how to sign up, it really is something kind of to his recent point, you have to stay informed, and you have to kind of know where to go. And so his thought was, well, why don't we just make it obvious? It's the first thing you see on the Stockton page. So as of right now, it lives right here. Sign up to get email notifications. It's the first thing you can click on when you get to the Stockton page. So definitely that's kudos to Jonathan, and definitely an open invitation to all of you for any other feedback like that. We actually ended up making that change for everything, for all of the communities. So we definitely want to make sure we're hearing from you. This page isn't useful if it's not useful for all of you.
And that page that Jessica was just on is the one I put in chat. That's the clearinghouse for you guys. It all jumps off from there. So save that one. Save that link.
Awesome. Thank you both. Okay, so I do want to check and see if we have any public comments. I'm going to ask Zong and Heather if you have anything on your social media platforms, and then I'll ask anybody that is on the Zoom line to please raise your hand if you're a member of the public and you'd like to make a public comment. Now is that time.
I'm not seeing anything on YouTube.
Excellent. I'm not seeing anything on Zoom. All right, well, you have the equivalent of like 90 seckons to write those comments in, but we're going to keep on and transition into the wrap up. So we do think we've reached the end of this meeting, and I just want to make sure that we offer the CSC members any chances to make final comments at this time, or the community co-host. And as you heard, this is the ILG's probably the last CSC meeting for this community, but we know you'll be in great hands with Harder and the Air District team, and ILG will still be administering your stipends for at least another month, so you'll continue to get information from us throughout this transition to make sure it is as seamless as possible. We so believe in this process. We so believe in all the work you've done, and we're so proud of the work you've done. It's been our pleasure to work with you for the last 18 months, so thank you so much. Any other comments from the CSC? Mary Elizabeth, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just was wondering if there was any idea of what the next subcommittee that will start meeting will be comprised of, what the topic will be for that next subcommittee.
Yeah, so I kind of outlined earlier what we thought based on the poll, the prioritization exercise. We felt like the very next one, at least if we were just going to do one more, would be the EV mechanic workforce development. That ranked really the next highest. And then after that, truck rerouting was the next highest. So that was sort of the thought there, Mary. Well, if there are no others, I just want to, on behalf of the Air District, and I know a lot of you on the CSC, give a round of applause and a big, big, big thank you to ILG, Erica and her team, to Hannah, to Julia, to all the folks on her team that have worked in the background. It is such a pleasure to work with them. We definitely have always appreciated the support. There's so much we've learned in the past couple of months. You probably all hopefully don't know this, maybe it's been seamless, but we've taken over some of the technical transition piece from ILG in this interim period as we transition to Harder. And man, we already knew they were working hard, but working Zoom on from behind the scenes while trying to run a meeting is a feat. And so we just have been so impressed, so thankful. And we really, really thank you for helping us transition. We look forward to Daniela and Jessica and the rest of the folks on the Harder team. It's really a great opportunity sometimes to do these transitions because you never, there's a lot that we've learned, but you never know what the next kind of chapter holds. And so I just think of it as a new chapter for us. And we just want to thank you all very much, Erica.
Thank you, and trust us, we are so rooting for you. We're watching from the sidelines. I'll still be on the AB617 consultation group, so I expect to see all of you. And again, we're so proud of the work that you're doing and that you are going to continue to do. It's so important. So all our love, all our love. And yes, Jonathan, we're still on step. All right, well, with that, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much. It's 2 minutes to spare. I hope that gives you a little extra time in your evening.